Hello everyone, welcome to Tuesday Talks with Avi. In this brand new series, every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Indian Standard Time, we dive into some of the most common and trickiest questions you will face in or have been asked in software and IT industry interviews. I will be picking a question each week, breaking it down, and giving you clear step-by-step explanations so you are more than ready to tackle them in the real world. I will also discuss the follow-up questions based on the main interview question. Whether you are gearing up for your first job interview, switching roles, or just want to brush up your skills, this is the place for you. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's get ready to ace those interview questions together. Today's question is coming from C Sharp, and this question is based on access modifier. We know if we have C Sharp background that C Sharp has classes, and the classes, once you write, you need to specify the access modifier to them, right? So Amazon wants to know here is if you don't specify an access modifier to a class, what is the default access modifier? Make sense? And if you see that if anything like internal is a default access modifier, how can you expose that particular to another assembly? This is a follow-up question. Let's go and deep dive into this question. See in theoretical first, and then we will go to explore this in practical. I will show you each and everything in action. First and foremost is to understand the intention of the company to ask such question. This question, when asked by Amazon wanted to assess the candidate's understanding on C# access modifiers. And they also want to know the ability to manage assembly level access, especially in the context of testing or modular application design. So what is the default access modifier? So there are many access modifiers basically. We have public, we have private, we have internal, and stuff like those. So out of these three, public, private, and internal, if you don't specify a class access, an access modifier, this becomes internal by default. Make sense? And if it is internal, what does it mean? This particular class can only be accessible within the current assembly. So let's go and see the things in action. I'm going to take you to the Visual Studio, and then I'm going to show all of these one by one. So in order to prepare the data, we created a couple of projects for which we went to the Visual Studio 2022, and then we selected console application. We created the application 1 there. We selected console application in order to create application 2. So we created application 2, and then we created a class library. Type class library, we had introduced a couple of methods. The first is an add method. Here I'm adding the XML comments. These XML comments are actually very useful when you are using a class library to some other project or other application. So when you utilize these methods and you consume those methods and call these methods, these intelligence will be appearing there. So details which you are mentioning here will be part and parcel of the method definition there. So this will be visible to you there. So we created 4 methods: add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and we gave the proper commenting to all of the methods. And hence it looks like that our class library is pretty much ready for the use. So we have 3 applications here: application 1, application 2, and the third is the class library. In this solution, we can see there are 3 projects. The 2 projects are console application of type, and the one is a class library type. You know how to add these projects and how to create. So this particular console application has no code right now. If you see, the program.cs is quite empty, and so your application 2 as well has no code right now. Make sense? Let's navigate to this class library project and try to see. This class library project has 4 methods: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So this is a calculator library which has 4 methods to do 4 types of operations. By default, this particular class of this class library has nothing specified here. If nothing is specified here, no access modifier, then it is considered to be internal. We have to prove that if this is by default an internal access modifier, then this particular assembly classes and these methods should not be accessible outside this assembly. They are only available within this assembly. So let's go and try to check this if I am able to access these methods of this library in one of my applications. So let me build this class library. Right clicking and building this class library gets built here, and then let's go and try to add these reference to application 1. So I'm coming here to dependency, right clicking and add project reference. I'm selecting class library from here, and this has been added. You see this class library here. Let's close this first and let's open this program.cs in order to use that class library. So calculator, if I am trying to use, it's not appearing here. Make sense? Because this particular class library's class access is not even available here because it was an internal type. The access modifier was internal. So what can we do? We will open the class library again. So I'm opening the class library and I'm suffixing this and prefixing this with something called public. If I'm prefixing with the public, then it should be accessible outside the world. I'm rebuilding this. So let's rebuild this so that it will be percolated to the other project. Now in this program 1, if I am going to the same place and if I am trying to use calculator library dot calculator c equals new calculator library, and here if I am trying to do c dot, I have got all this method like addition. So you see this method is for adding two supplied numeric values like divide, like multiplication, and everything gets appeared here. Make sense? So the one thing that we have learned here is that if you have a class library and if the class is by default public, then it is exposed to the outside world. If it is not public, it is not exposed. So let's say I am removing it again here and I am rebuilding this. So after rebuilding this, if I am coming to this one, I should be getting some error. So now the error is calculator is inaccessible due to its protection level, because the protection level was internal, and if it is internal, then it should not be accessible outside the assembly. So where I'm utilizing this, I'm utilizing in this assembly. This is a separate assembly and this is another assembly. So this library, I want to utilize this in the assembly. Since this class of this library is internal, I am not able to access this. Make sense? Hence it is justified that the default access modifier for a class is internal, and hence it cannot be utilized and used outside the assembly. Now let's go and try to evolve a mechanism by which we can expose this particular to this particular application. So we can actually expose one internal class member to another specific assembly. It's not like it will be exposed to every, like if it is public, then it is, if I'm writing public here, then this is exposed to every assembly. Any other assembly can reference this particular library and use this. But if it is internal, then you can specifically expose it to particular library, particular application. So how can we do? We open the property page of the library, and there is something called item group. Within this, there is an option called internals visible to, and include and that particular application name and that particular assembly name. So we have exposed this to particular. So what we are making sure is this particular, any internal in this particular library will be visible to this particular guy, this particular assembly or this particular application. So let's go and rebuild it. And after rebuilding it, let's open this program.cs and it should work for me. So now see, this is working. If I'm going to make 8, 5, 5, semicolon, load, well, this is working. But what if I am going to use the same assembly, same library to another application? So let's go to application 2, and here even let's add the references of the library. So let's library references has been added. Now if I'm going to use calculator, it is not accessible. So you see here, it is accessible to program 1 but not accessible to program 2. Why? Because you have exposed it to only program 1. If you change it to program 2, and you have exposed it to only application 1. If you change it to application 2, it will only be exposed to application 2 here. So this is how we can expose any particular class library or an assembly or any class to any particular assembly using internals visible to property. Make sense? The concept of access modifier, which I have explained you, and we have also explained you that if it is a default access modifier is internal, how to expose this to the other assembly is pretty much clear to you. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more high quality technical content, and also hit that like button so that you will have the notification in future. Drop your question in and comments if any. I'll be happy to answer them. See you in the next one. Bye bye.